Hey guys, welcome to another video. This time we're going to be discussing Mass Effect 3 after the fact. Obviously it's been out for a while now, so this is just going to be talking about what I think BioWare have done wrong, what I think they've done right, and how I feel it can stacks up against the other two games in the series. Now bear in mind, I'm not really going to be discussing the ending sequence at the moment, as of the time of recording it's very up in the air. EA are saying they're considering changing the ending sequence, so we'll see how they're going to do that. Instead, we're going to be talking about the mechanics of the game. First up, I'm going to be talking about the gripes, and out of those, the first I'm going to be talking about is the graphics. There are some ugly textures and a little bit of pop-up. Character models sometimes act a bit weird, such as they don't appear properly. But one of the most jarring ones for me is on certain planets. There's obviously grass, and it doesn't look very nice at all. It's very ugly and it sticks out like a sore thumb. Obviously they're still using effectively this generation of hardware, so that's probably why. I mean, obviously the Xbox 360 and PS3 are getting a little bit long in the tooth now, and the PC version doesn't fare any better, in case anyone's playing on consoles and is wondering how the PC version does look. Obviously it has slightly higher resolution textures and so on, but improving the texture qualities doesn't really help with the grass at all. Neither does anti-aliasing or anisotropic filtering. It's a small point, and it doesn't really affect the enjoyment of the game. It just kind of sticks out a bit compared to, say, the beautiful backdrops of space, or even the really good character models. Shepard, for example, Ashley, they all look fantastic, in comparison to some of the uglier, stick points, shall I call it, in the graphics. So anyway, moving on from that, I'm going to be talking about one that I think slightly more impacts gameplay, or at least in my opinion, the story, and that is character selection. Now in ME2 specifically, there was an absolutely huge amount of squad members. Now obviously some of those are going to be, some of those were, shall I say, downloadable content, such as Kasumi. But I've got to say, should I say Zaid and a few others. Anyway, in my opinion, Mass Effect 3, it could have benefited a little bit more with a larger selection of squad members. Obviously you've got some of the key ones still in the game, such as Ashley, you've obviously got Gallus, but some of the really cool ones aren't playable in this, such as Jack, and I think that's kind of a shame. The aura's still there, but I was a little bit sad that certain characters didn't make it in as a playable state. I think that the squad selection was fairly limited. It is nice that certain characters such as ED are in, so that's kind of interesting actually. I had a feeling something was going to happen with her avatar, when it attacked Ashley, so it's kind of nice. Having said all of that, I do wish that more characters were available. I don't think the selection is particularly bad. James, for example, isn't a bad character. On neither any of the other new additions, Edie's kind of fun. I just wish a few of the old favourites were in. However, I will say that it is nice, however, to be able to see most of them, even if it's just brief cameos. You can at least see them in the in the universe. One of the characters I really miss actually is Miranda. I thought she was really cool. But anyway, moving on. Planet scanning is of course in the game. One of the things I did actually quite like about Mass Effect 1 was the actual ability to land your rover on various planets and kind of scout around. I think it was quite nice. Of course, planet scanning in Mass Effect 2 was a pain in the butt, and it's been somewhat slimmed down for this version. It's still here. Obviously, this allows you to either pick up fuel, cash, or war assets. So it's not bad. I don't think it's particularly interesting. There has been a number of occasions where I've basically, to be honest with you, just looked at a guide because I really could not be bothered to try and figure out the exact planet. Sometimes they give vague descriptions, other times it's fairly decent and you can obviously figure it out. Other times it's very vague and I can't be bothered to scan, a dozen different systems to try and figure out where it actually is. On the other hand, I will say that I do quite like the scanning when you're just floating around the systems. Even though it does call Reapers, I think that's somewhat realistic that you don't actually have a chance to fight them off. After all, the Normandy is not a match against, say, a 2 kilometre size, Reaper ship. I do think it would have been a bit more interesting if they'd have done something a little bit more with that. I feel it is missing something. I'm not quite sure what, so I won't really, count it against them. I just feel that this could have been something a little bit more interesting done with it. But it is still a nice mechanic. As I've said, I do feel, however, that the sense of exploration in Mass Effect 3 is a little bit lower. I don't know if it's just me, but there does seem to be, shall I say, less characters you can talk with in general. The interactivity in Mass Effect 2 was pretty high, as is 1. But in Mass Effect 3, it's not quite there. It's pretty good, and it's quite nice, for example, that you can overhear conversations and then, be expected to run along and help those people find various things. And in some cases, they just give you cash credits. Other times, they give you, for example, assets for the war. Other times, they'll just give you a small experience boost, which is, not bad in itself. However, I do feel that there should have been more conversation options with some of the characters. It is quite nice, however, that, for example, when you're walking through the Citadel, there's often two characters who are, disagreeing with something. They're having a discussion with, say, what to do with a various situation, and you can choose which one to side with, netting you either Paragon or Renegade points, or just, general notoriety, as well as sometimes giving you small rewards. So that's quite nice, but I do feel there could have been slightly more to do with it. In fact, some of the times you can just almost run off and you don't feel like you've missed anything in particular. So, what about the good points of the game? Obviously, Mass Effect 3, the writing itself has not slumped whatsoever. The storyline, the acting, the voice acting, shall I say, and the delivery of the lines, the quality of production, all of it's really up there. It might have even been improved somewhat from Mass Effect 2. Although that's somewhat debatable, but either way, it's certainly what you'd expect from a BioWare production. And it's quite nice that they've retained all the same voice actors. Joker is still Joker, as you'd expect, and so on. Edie is still Edie. And that's very nice. It's sometimes jarring if, say, a different voice actor starts playing a different character, or sorry, the same character, and this is not the case here. There's still that continuity, which is just absolutely awesome. The universe itself still feels pretty rich. I've mentioned that I do feel the sense of exploration is somewhat lacking in certain instances, but for the most part you still have plenty of pickups, items you can grab, and it's still nice. There's still tons of customization, especially with weapons. You can pretty much play as Commander Shepard however you'd like. You can base him more on powers, you can base him more on defensive or offensive masteries, so on, and it's quite nice. They've also removed the restriction on certain type of weapons. So, for example, beforehand, if you are certain types of character, you couldn't really use, say, a sniper rifle. This is no longer the case. Obviously, if you're certain types of character, you'll benefit using certain weapons more. However, it is quite nice for certain situations that you can pretty much choose whatever weapons you'd like. Obviously, squad mates the same thing, and you can still choose one of the bonus powers. So, for example, you can use, say, Slam, or what have you. It's quite nice. That, of course, has been there for a while now, in previous games, so it's good to see it's made a return. There is also something amazingly satisfying about playing the game. Mass Effect, the series, has always been one of my favourites, and I don't even know how many hours I spent on Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 1. They are, to me, some of the pinnacles of gaming, and Mass Effect 3, I obviously had ridiculously high hopes for it, and for the most part it's actually lived up to them fairly well. In some cases it's actually exceeded them. So, I had played the demo, of course, and loved it. And the same thing is definitely said here. The Citadel still looks pretty large and vibrant with life. Obviously, it's not as big as what it should be. It's kind of the same thing as you normally get in games, where something's supposed to be a main city or town, and you can only go to certain parts of it. But it's not realistic for them to have changed that in Mass Effect 3 with the Citadel. So it's still nice, and there's still conversation options, and you can still vastly affect the outcome of the games, such as, do you want a certain character to join the squad? That's all nice, and there's still quite a lot of decisions there. It does still allow you to play the game differently. If you want to play the game more of well, basically a third-person shooter, and even reduce the ability to, say, make decisions, well, by all means you can do that. On the other hand, if you just want to play the game, as I feel anyway, it was intended, and you want to make all the decisions yourself, and you would like to level up your characters and everything else, why, you can do that as well. Obviously, that's my preferential way of playing the game, and I don't really see why you'd not want to do that, but I suppose there are some people who would prefer to do it that way. Anyway, although I feel that the squad selection isn't quite as big as I'd hoped, it is still nice that you can still see a lot of the characters around, and that's quite interesting actually to see how they've gotten on, and you can still interact with them and get quite a lot of the backstory of what's happened to them during, say, between basically Mass Effect 2 and 3. So that's kind of cool. As I've said, I do wish that more were available to talk with, but I suppose that could always be remedied with DLC, and there's probably going to be a crap ton of DLC missions available for it, and although people have mixed feelings about DLC, I'm actually quite looking forward to it, specifically if it's meaty. Some DLC for Mass Effect 2 was actually pretty damn good, such as Kasumi's Stolen Memory was actually pretty big. Lair of the Shadow Broker, once again, several hours of gameplay there. So you don't mind paying for that, and I for one am really looking forward to it. Anyway, I feel like I've waffled enough. These are only the main points, there are probably half a dozen I've forgotten. But anyway, I just want to hear your guys' opinions. What do you think of Mass Effect 3? And, how else do you feel that they could have improved the game? What are you hoping you're going to be seeing on DLC? So anyway, with that all said, I'm going to wrap this video up. So take care and goodbye.